Ladies and gentlemen, when God heals a woman, truly heals her, she becomes dangerous, because a healed woman is not moved by what broke her anymore. She remembers the pain, but it no longer defines her. She carries the memory, but not the wound. She's been through the fire and she came out as gold. There was a time she cried herself to sleep, asking God why. There was a time she tried to fix people who were never assigned her healing. Now she knows better. God has done surgery on her soul, and what used to destroy her now develops her. What used to silence her now fuels her. She used to fight to be seen, now she moves quietly in her purpose. She doesn't chase, she attracts. She doesn't beg for validation, she walks in revelation. Because when God heals a woman, He doesn't just patch her up, He restores her identity. He realigns her heart. He reintroduces her to herself. People look at her and see strength, but they don't see the scars that taught her how to stand. They don't see the nights she prayed instead of breaking down. They don't see the spiritual warfare she overcame to smile again. She's dangerous not because she's loud, but because she's free. Free from fear. Free from the opinions of others. Free from the chains of her past. Her power is not in her perfection, it's in her peace. Her confidence is not arrogance, it's evidence of her encounter with God. She's dangerous because she no longer seeks revenge, she seeks purpose. She's dangerous because she doesn't need applause, she's already approved. She's dangerous because she's healed, and healed people heal others. You see, the enemy loved her when she was broken, because broken people are easier to control. But once she got healed, she became a threat, because now she can see clearly. Now she can speak with authority. She carries wisdom that only pain could produce. So if you're listening to this and you're in the middle of your healing, don't rush it. God is crafting something powerful inside you. Every tear is watering your transformation. Every rejection is redirecting you. Every delay is divine training, because when God gets done with you, you won't just be healed, you'll be dangerous. You'll walk different. You'll love different. You'll worship different. And people will look at you and wonder, what changed? And you'll simply say, I met the healer. He made me whole. When God begins the work of healing in your life, it's not just about removing pain. It's about revealing power. Healing isn't a gentle process, it's a sacred one. It's the moment when God looks at everything that tried to break you and says, watch how I use this. Healing doesn't erase your past, it redefines it. It transforms your pain into purpose, your weakness into wisdom, and your heartbreak into holy fire. You see, there's a power that only comes from being broken and restored. You can't buy it, you can't fake it, and you can't rush it. It's the kind of power that's forged in tears, refined in silence, and proven in endurance. It's the strength that comes when you realize that every piece of your story, even the parts you wish never happened, was preparing you for something greater. Healing produces a quiet power, a spiritual authority that doesn't need to shout to be felt. It's a presence that speaks even when you're silent. There was a time you thought your pain disqualified you. There was a season when you looked at your scars and saw shame. Now you're beginning to see them differently. You're starting to understand that those scars are not signs of weakness. They are proof of survival, evidence that hell tried, but heaven won. They remind you that you didn't just endure, you overcame. That's the power of healing. Turns what was meant to destroy you into the very thing that defines your strength. Healing produces power because it shifts your perspective. Before, you might have seen your struggle as punishment. Now you see it as preparation. Before, you questioned God's timing. Now you trust His wisdom. Healing doesn't just change how you feel, it changes how you see. You begin to understand that the things you went through weren't random. They were necessary. They were molding you into the woman God called you to be. And once you realize that, you stop wasting energy trying to go back to who you were before the pain. You start embracing who you're becoming because of it. When a woman heals, she becomes spiritually unshakable. The same things that used to offend her, drain her, or trigger her don't hold power anymore. Because healing makes you whole, and wholeness is strength. You stop chasing closure from people who can't give it. You stop seeking validation from voices that never understood your calling. Healing teaches you that peace is more valuable than attention, that silence is stronger than reaction, and that God's approval outweighs the world's applause. There's something unexplainable about a healed woman's confidence. It's not loud or boastful. It's anchored. She walks differently because she's not walking wounded anymore. She doesn't need to prove anything because she knows what she's been through. She's fought private battles that no one knows about and come out victorious. There's a fire in her eyes that tells you she's been through something. And God was with her the whole time. That's the kind of power that healing produces, power that comes from pain processed through faith. Healing gives birth to discernment. You start seeing through the surface. You don't just hear what people say, you sense their spirit. You don't just move on impulse, you move with intention. Because once you've been broken and rebuilt, you no longer operate out of emotion. You operate out of wisdom. You can spot manipulation from a mile away. You can feel when something is off because you've learned to listen to God's voice within you. That's power. That's maturity. That's growth birthed from the soil of your healing. And here's the beauty. Healing doesn't mean you'll never feel pain again. It means pain no longer controls your decisions. It means your triggers don't drive you anymore. It means that when something hurts, you run to God instead of back to what broke you. That's real power. The ability to respond with wisdom, not wounds. The ability to walk away from chaos and protect your peace. The ability to forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you refuse to let bitterness block your blessings. Healing also produces power in how you love. When you're healed, you love without fear. You give without losing yourself. You understand boundaries, not as walls, but as gates that protect your heart. You know that love rooted in God doesn't deplete you, it develops you. A healed woman's love carries clarity. She no longer chases those who can't match her peace. She no longer lowers herself to be accepted by those who never intended to understand her. Healing teaches her that not everyone deserves access, and that protecting her heart is a form of worship. You see, healing is a form of resurrection. God takes what died inside you and breathes life into it again. He takes the ashes of disappointment and turns them into something beautiful. He takes your tears and waters the seeds of your destiny. That's why a healed woman is dangerous, because everything the enemy used to destroy her, God uses to develop her. She's proof that grace still works. She's evidence that brokenness can become brilliance. She's a walking testimony that healing doesn't just restore what was lost, it upgrades what remains. When God heals you, He doesn't send you back to who you used to be. He elevates you to who you were meant to be. The version of you that emerges after healing is wiser, softer, stronger, and more intentional. You carry yourself with quiet confidence. You speak with authority. You walk with discernment. You love with boundaries. You pray with fire because you've learned that power isn't about control. It's about surrender. It's not about having it all together. It's about knowing who holds you together. So, if you're still in your healing season, don't rush it. Don't despise the process. Every step, every tear, every setback is part of your strengthening. You may not see it now, but God is fortifying your spirit. He's teaching you endurance. He's building your patience. He's preparing you to stand in rooms your pain was preparing you for, because when your healing is complete, your power will speak for itself. You won't have to announce it. It will radiate from you. Healing produces power, not the kind that intimidates, but the kind that inspires, not the kind that boasts, but the kind that blesses. It's a holy power, the kind that can walk through storms and still smile, the kind that can forgive without bitterness, the kind that can carry peace in chaos, the kind that can look back at what was meant to destroy her and say, "Thank you, God, because if I hadn't gone through that, wouldn't have known you like this." So let the healing happen. Let God mend the places you've hidden. Let Him turn your pain into power, your tears into testimony, and your scars into strength. Because when the healing is done, you'll stand taller, love deeper, and live freer. You'll become the woman who doesn't just survive, She leads others into healing too. There is a kind of strength that doesn't roar. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It's the quiet strength that comes from peace, the kind of peace that only God can give. When a woman carries peace, she carries power. Not the kind of power the world understands, but the kind that shakes the unseen. Her calmness confuses chaos. Her silence silences storms. Stillness sends a message that she knows who she is and who she is. Peace is not weakness, it's warfare. It's choosing not to engage in every battle you're invited to. It's standing still when everything in you wants to fight back. It's trusting that God will handle what you could destroy by reacting. When peace becomes your weapon, you don't fight people. You fight in prayer. You don't chase explanations. You rest in revelation. You don't lose your composure. You anchor yourself in confidence that God is still in control. There was a time when your emotions ruled you. You used to respond to every accusation, defend yourself against every lie, try to explain yourself to people who never wanted to understand you. But healing taught you something different. It taught you that silence can be sacred. It taught you that your peace is too expensive to trade for someone else's chaos. It taught you that not every battle is yours to fight. Some belong entirely to God. When a woman chooses peace, she's not giving up, she's giving it over. She's handing her burdens, her anger, her questions to God and saying, "You fight this one for me?" And God always does, because peace is the proof that you trust Him. It's the evidence that your faith has matured. You no longer need to control the outcome because you've learned that God already wrote the story. Peace makes you unshakable. It anchors you in the middle of uncertainty. While others panic, you praise. While others react, you rest because you know something they don't. You know that storms don't scare those who know the one who calms them. You've seen God show up too many times to doubt Him now. That's why your peace irritates the enemy, because it means his attacks aren't working anymore. Peace doesn't mean everything around you is calm. It means you are calm in the middle of everything around you. It's the realization that your circumstances don't define your spirit. It's walking through chaos with a steady heart because you're care enough, because you're carrying divine assurance. That's why the enemy tries so hard to disturb your peace. Because he knows once you lose peace, you lose perspective. But when you protect your peace, you protect your purpose. A peaceful woman is a dangerous woman because she's not easily provoked. You can't pull her out of character. You can't make her compete. And you can't distract her with drama. She's learned that peace is not passive. It's power under control. It's strength wrapped in stillness. It's fire disguised as calm. It takes maturity to reach that place. Peace changes how you move. You don't rush anymore. You don't chase. You don't force what's not meant for you. You've learned that what God has for you won't require anxiety to maintain it. Peace teaches you to wait with grace, to walk with confidence, to speak with purpose. You no longer move from desperation. You move from discernment. Because peace gives you clarity, and clarity gives you control. There was a time when your peace depended on people, on how they treated you, what they said, or whether they stayed. But now, your peace comes from presence, the presence of God. You've learned to find rest in His promises instead of in people's approval. That's power. Because once you stop depending on others to give you peace, you become unstoppable. No one can take what they didn't give. Peace also transforms how you love. You stop loving out of fear and you start loving from fullness. You don't try to fix others to find your worth. You don't beg for attention. You simply exist in confidence. Peaceful love has boundaries. It knows when to stay and when to step back. It knows that forgiveness doesn't mean access. It knows that walking away can sometimes be the holiest form of strength. Peaceful love doesn't shout to prove loyalty. It shows it quietly through consistency. Peace becomes your perspective. You see rejection as redirection. You see delay as divine protection. You stop interpreting silence as abandonment and start recognizing it as preparation. Peace changes your inner language. Instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" you start saying, "What is this teaching me?" Instead of fighting for control, you surrender to alignment. That's when peace starts fighting for you. When you carry peace, you start to discern where your energy belongs. You realize you don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. You learn that peace is preserved by distance sometimes. You stop explaining your calling to those who aren't called to understand it. You begin to guard your heart, your mind, and your spirit because you know the value of your serenity. Protecting your peace is not selfish. It's stewardship. It's honoring the work God has done inside you. Peace is your weapon because it keeps you grounded when life tries to shake you. It allows you to stand firm when everything around you shifts. It gives you the wisdom to respond instead of react. When others expect chaos, you respond with calmness. And that's what confuses the enemy because he knows how to fight anxiety, fear, and anger, but he can't fight peace. Peace disarms his tactics. It weakens his grip. It declares, you may come at me, but you can't move me. The truth is, peace is not the absence of warfare. It's the presence of God in the middle of it. You may still face storms, but they won't shake you like they used to. You may still feel pressure, but it won't break you. You may still be misunderstood, but it won't bother you. Because when peace lives inside you, you've already won the battle. That's why you can smile when others expect you to crumble. That's why you can rest when others are restless. That's why you can forgive when they expect you to be bitter. Because peace is your proof that you've outgrown the old version of yourself. You no longer let the world dictate your emotions. You let God direct your reactions. A woman who walks in peace is not to be underestimated. She doesn't need to announce her growth. You can feel it in her presence. Her peace speaks louder than her pain. It testifies that she's fought battles no one saw and came out with serenity instead of scars. Her peace is her armor, her authority, her testimony. It's the mark of someone who's been through fire and refused to come out smelling like smoke. So when life tries to shake you, when people try to provoke you, when circumstances tempt you to lose control, remember this: peace is your weapon. Don't drop it. Don't trade it. Don't let anyone steal it. Because peace is not just something you carry, it's something you become. It's the reflection of God's presence in your soul. It's the evidence that you've matured beyond the noise. It's the whisper of heaven that says, you don't have to fight this. I've already won. And that's why she's dangerous. Not because she's loud, not because she's perfect, but because she's peaceful. The enemy doesn't know what to do with a woman who refuses to be moved by chaos. Her calm is her strength. Her quiet is her confidence. Her peace is her weapon. And with it, she wins battles no one even knows she's fighting. There is a shift that happens when a woman finally knows who she is, not who the world told her to be, not who pain tried to make her, but who God says she is. That's when she becomes unstoppable. When she walks in identity, insecurity loses its grip. Because a woman who knows her worth doesn't need to prove it. She's not striving anymore, she's settled. She's not begging for a seat at the table. She realizes she is the table. Walking in identity means understanding that your value isn't attached to performance, perfection, or people. It's rooted in purpose. It's knowing that before anyone ever rejected you, before anyone ever overlooked you, before anyone ever hurt you, God already approved you. When you walk in that truth, you stop living for applause and start living from assurance. You stop chasing validation and start walking in revelation. There was a time when you questioned everything about yourself, your voice, your beauty, your calling, your worth. The world had a way of making you doubt what God had already confirmed. You tried to fit in circles that were never designed to hold your destiny. You tried to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You silenced your own voice just to keep peace with people who were never meant to stay. God let you go through that season so you could discover something powerful. Your identity is not up for negotiation. When you walk in identity, you no longer depend on the world to tell you who you are. You've learned to go to the one who created you. You've learned that being chosen by God doesn't require being understood by everyone else. You've learned that favor doesn't always come with followers. I challenge you to love enough, and anointing doesn't always come with applause. You don't need to explain your assignment to people who can't comprehend your anointing. You simply walk confidently, quietly, and courageously in the truth of who God made you to be. Insecurity feeds on comparison, but identity thrives in contentment. When you know who you are, you stop measuring your life by someone else's highlight reel. You stop looking at what others have and feeling behind. You realize that your lane is sacred and your timing is divine. You no longer envy anyone because you understand that what's for you cannot miss you. You start celebrating others without feeling threatened because their success doesn't diminish your shine. It reminds you that God is still blessing people and He hasn't forgotten you. Walking in identity changes how you carry yourself. You speak differently, you move differently. You set standards that reflect your value. You stop allowing temporary people to speak permanent words into your life. You stop begging for love that you were designed to embody. You no longer need to be chosen by others because you've already been called by God. That realization frees you. It delivers you from people-pleasing, from perfectionism, from performance-based worth. You start living from peace instead of pressure. A woman who walks in identity is a woman who's done the inner work. She's faced her insecurities head on and handed them over to God. She's looked at her flaws and realized they don't disqualify her. They humanize her. She's learned to embrace both her strength and her softness, boldness and her humility, because she knows her worth isn't in her image, it's in her essence. She's no longer obsessed with what others think. She's focused on what God knows. When you walk in identity, rejection stops being your enemy and becomes your redirection. You start to see that every door that closed was protection. Every no was divine alignment. Every person who walked away was part of God's pruning process. You don't see yourself as abandoned. You see yourself as refined, because identity gives you perspective. It allows you to see pain through purpose. It helps you understand that you didn't lose anything essential. God was simply making room for better. Insecurity will tell you that you're not enough. Identity tells you that you're chosen. Insecurity whispers that you're too much. Identity reminds you that you're fearfully and wonderfully made. Insecurity compares, identity celebrates. Insecurity hides, identity shines. And when you walk in identity, you stop letting lies lead your life. You start living from truth, the truth that you were created intentionally, purposefully, and powerfully. Walking in identity doesn't mean arrogance, it means awareness. You're aware of your calling, your worth, and your boundaries. You're aware of what deserves your energy and what doesn't. You don't need to explain your peace or justify your confidence. It's not pride, it's positioning. You've been through too much to act like you don't know who you are. You fought too hard to go back to insecurity. When a woman walks in identity, she carries an unspoken authority. Her presence commands respect because her spirit is aligned with heaven. She doesn't need to chase influence. Influence follows her. She doesn't compete. She completes assignments. She doesn't operate from fear. She flows from faith. People sense something different about her. A steadiness, a glow, a confidence that can't be imitated because it's birthed in intimacy with God. Identity also affects how she loves. She no longer gives her heart to those who can't handle her depth. She doesn't settle for half-hearted love or tolerate inconsistency. She knows she's not hard to love. She's just not easy to deceive. Her heart is healed, her spirit is guarded, and her love is intentional. She gives from overflow, not emptiness. Because she's no longer trying to prove her worth through relationships. She's walking in it. When she walks in identity, her priorities change. She values peace over popularity, purpose over performance, alignment over attention. She stops being everywhere and starts being effective where God places her. She learns to say no without guilt, to rest without shame, to move without explanation. That's what identity does. It roots you so deeply in who you are that you no longer need external confirmation to feel complete. That's what makes her dangerous. Insecurity made her reactive. Identity makes her strategic. Insecurity made her loud. Identity makes her calm. Insecurity made her chase. Identity makes her attract. She no longer operates from emptiness. She operates from overflow. She's not looking for her worth. She's walking in it. She's not trying to find her place. She's already standing in it. The woman who walks in identity is not afraid of solitude. She's learned that quiet seasons don't mean she's forgotten. They mean she's being developed. She's learned to trust the process because she knows who authored it. She's learned to embrace waiting because she knows delay is not denial. She's learned to stand tall even when no one applauds because she knows her value doesn't fluctuate with people's opinions. Identity gives her peace. It gives her purpose. It gives her power. She's not chasing titles or trying to prove success. She's living authentically in her calling. Her confidence doesn't come from affirmation. It comes from alignment. And when she walks into a room, she carries a stillness that can't be manufactured because real confidence isn't loud, it's rooted. So she walks not in insecurity, not in fear, not in comparison, but in identity. She walks with grace because she's no longer striving. She walks with confidence because no longer doubting. She walks with wisdom because she's learned from her wounds. She walks with peace because she knows she's protected. And she walks with purpose because she finally understands who she is in God. That's why she's unshakable. That's why she's radiant. That's why she's free. Because when a woman walks in identity, she walks in authority. She no longer carries insecurity. She carries inheritance. And her very presence becomes a declaration that says, I am who God says I am. And that's enough. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that the pain she thought would destroy her was actually preparing her. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the disappointment, they weren't wasted. They were divine ingredients in a greater recipe that only God could see. What she once called pain, heaven calls purpose. Because God never allows suffering without strategy. Every tear you cried watered something that would eventually grow in you. Every loss you endured was planting the seed of strength that would one day bloom into destiny. Pain is not pleasant, but it's powerful. It teaches you what comfort cannot. It shapes you in ways ease never could. Pain forces you to confront what's broken, what's false, and what's unnecessary. It refines your priorities and deepens your dependence on God. When everything feels stripped away, that's when you discover what truly sustains you. That's when you find purpose. Because purpose doesn't always show up in victory. Sometimes it's born in the valley. There was a season you didn't understand why you had to go through what you did. You asked God, why me? You tried to make sense of pain that seemed endless, but now, looking back, you realize that pain was not punishment. It was preparation. It was heaven's way of positioning you for something bigger than you could see. You were not being broken to be buried. You were being broken to be built. God was stripping away everything that couldn't go with you into your next season. When purpose begins to replace pain, your perspective shifts. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? You stop feeling cursed by your struggle and start feeling called through it. You realize that every closed door redirected you, every delay developed you, and every heartbreak humbled you into greater dependence on God. That's the transition from pain to purpose. When you understand that nothing was wasted. Purpose is often hidden in what hurts you the most. The very area where you were wounded becomes the area where you're meant to serve. The same rejection that made you cry becomes the motivation to help others feel seen. The same loss that broke your heart becomes the inspiration for your mission. Because God never wastes pain. He repurposes it. He turns agony into assignment. What once felt like your end becomes your beginning. When you walk through pain with faith, you discover layers of yourself you didn't know existed. You learn resilience, patience, empathy, and courage. Pain humbles you, but it also sharpens you. It burns away pride and leaves behind power. It breaks open your heart so you can love deeper, lead better, and live wiser. Purpose doesn't emerge from perfection. It grows out of pressure. Diamonds are formed under it, so our world changes. There was a time when your pain made you bitter, but now it makes you better. It's no longer your identity. It's your inspiration. You used to hide your story because it hurt too much to tell, but now your story heals others. You've learned that transparency is not weakness. It's ministry. When you share how you overcame, you become a mirror of hope for someone who's still fighting. That's what happens when purpose replaces pain. Your scars start to shine with meaning. When God heals your pain, He doesn't erase your memory, He redeems it. You remember what happened, but it no longer holds you hostage. The sting is gone. The strength remains. You no longer dwell in what you lost. You rejoice in what you gained. Wisdom, maturity, and divine perspective. You stop chasing closure from people and start finding it in God. You stop trying to understand everything and simply trust that every season served its purpose. Purpose replaces pain when you realize your suffering gave you a voice. It gave you insight others don't have. It taught you how to recognize real love, authentic peace, and divine alignment. It stripped away shallow connections and left you with spiritual clarity. That's why you can't hate what hurt you, because it revealed who you truly are. Pain birthed purpose, and purpose birthed power. Some of your greatest gifts were uncovered in your most painful moments. The compassion you carry came from your heartbreak. The wisdom you share came from your mistakes. The strength people admire, it was built in your storms. The grace you walk with, it was learned through loss. Every part of your pain served a purpose. It refined your character, deepened your faith, and prepared you for what you're walking in now. Purpose also changes how you handle adversity. You no longer see trials as attacks, you see them as assignments. You understand that resistance means you're on the right path. You no longer panic when things fall apart because you've learned that divine rebuilding often starts with breaking. You've matured to a point where peace becomes your response to pain because you know who's in control. You can smile in the middle of struggle because you know something is being birthed from it. When you let purpose replace pain, your story gains power. What once embarrassed you becomes your testimony. What once silenced you becomes your message. You begin to thank God for things you once begged Him to take away, because you finally see how it all fits together. Every heartbreak was holy ground. Every loss was part of your training. Every delay was God's way of developing your discernment. You weren't losing, you were learning. You realized that God didn't waste a single tear. Every one of them watered your growth. Every lonely night drew you closer to Him. Every disappointment redirected your focus from people to purpose. Now, instead of asking for a lighter load, you thank God for stronger shoulders. Instead of running from pain, you extract the lesson from it. You've learned that purpose doesn't erase pain, it redeems it. A woman who's found purpose after pain is dangerous because she's unbreakable. She's not afraid of storms because she's learned to dance in the rain. She doesn't fear rejection because she knows who she is without approval. She doesn't cling to comfort because she understands that growth requires stretching. She's walked through fire and came out with faith. She's touched heartbreak and turned it into healing. That's the beauty of divine purpose. It turns victims into visionaries. Pain tries to define you, purpose redefines you. Pain says you'll never recover. Purpose says, watch me rise. Pain says you're broken. Purpose says you're being built. Pain says you lost everything. Purpose says you gained understanding. The moment you let go of the why me and embrace the what now, your transformation begins. That's when you stop surviving and start thriving. That's when you step into destiny with divine confidence. Purpose doesn't mean your life will be easy. It means your life will be meaningful. It means you stop carrying pain like a prison and start carrying it like a platform. It means your past becomes the soil where your calling grows. Even though you still feel the ache sometimes, it no longer controls you. You've learned to let the pain push you instead of paralyze you. So, when you look back on what broke you, don't see defeat, see design. Don't see failure, see formation. Don't see loss, see legacy. Because every painful chapter was part of the masterpiece God was writing in you. He took what the enemy meant for evil and turned it into empowerment. Now, when people ask you how you're still standing, you'll smile and say, because my pain found purpose. You'll no longer resent your past. You'll respect it. You'll no longer cry over what you lost. You'll celebrate what you became. Because purpose has replaced pain, now you walk in the strength that comes from knowing it was never wasted. And that's why she's powerful. Because what was once her breaking point became her turning point. What once hurt her now helps others. What once crushed her now crowns her. She no longer hides her scars. She honors them because they remind her that even in pain, God had a plan, and now her purpose has the final word. There's a sacred kind of strength that rises when a woman becomes free, truly free. Not the freedom the world talks about, but the freedom that comes when her soul is no longer chained to fear, approval, guilt, or the need to please. When she's been through the breaking, the healing, and the becoming, she wakes up one day and realizes nothing owns her anymore. Not her past, not people's opinions, pain that once tried to bury her. That's when she becomes fearless. Freedom doesn't come easy. It's not handed to you. It's fought for. It's a process that starts in the unseen places where God begins to untangle everything that once held you captive. It's not just walking out of what broke you, it's refusing to return to it. Freedom begins the moment you stop pretending to be okay and let God meet you in the rawness of your reality. It's when you stop carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations and start carrying only what God assigned to you. A woman who has found her freedom has discovered her wings. She no longer walks, she soars because she's not afraid of falling anymore. She's fallen before and learned that even then, God caught her. She's made mistakes and survived them. She's been rejected and still risen. She's been misunderstood, but she's learned that being misunderstood doesn't mean she's misaligned. Freedom makes her bold because she's never been afraid, but because she no longer lets fear make her decisions. Fear used to control her. The fear of failure, of being alone, being enough. She used to live her life walking on eggshells, trying to make everyone comfortable, trying to prove her worth through performance. But then, God stepped in and broke the illusion. He allowed the very things she feared to happen, only to show her that even in her worst moments, He was still there. Freedom came when she realized that fear was a liar and faith was the truth. She doesn't chase people, she chases peace. She doesn't live to impress, she lives to express what God placed inside her. She's not afraid to say no, because she understands that boundaries are not rejection, they're protection. She's no longer apologizing for being who she is or for outgrowing places that no longer feed her soul. Freedom taught her that you don't owe explanations for your evolution. You just keep walking in truth. Freedom makes her fearless because she's learned that the approval of others is too fragile to build confidence on. People change, opinions shift. God's word about her never does. She's anchored in that now. She no longer looks for validation in faces that once overlooked her. She knows she's chosen, even if she's not celebrated. She's secure, even if she's standing alone, because her worth isn't up for debate. It was settled by her Creator. A free woman is not reckless, she's intentional. Freedom doesn't make her careless, it makes her courageous. She knows that living small doesn't serve God. Shrinking won't make others shine brighter. Freedom gave her permission to take up space, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. She's no longer afraid of her own power. She doesn't downplay her strength to make others feel comfortable. She knows that her light isn't arrogance, it's assignment. She was created to stand out, not to blend in. Freedom makes her fearless in love too. She no longer loves from fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of being hurt again. She loves from a healed heart, not a wounded one. She knows that love rooted in fear will always lead to bondage, so she's learned to love freely but wisely, to give deeply but not foolishly. She's not afraid to walk away when peace leaves the room, because she knows that real love never costs her her dignity. Freedom also gives her a new relationship with failure. She's no longer terrified of falling short because she knows that failure doesn't define her, it refines her. She understands that every mistake carries a message and every setback contains strategy. She's learned to see failure as feedback, not finality. That's why she can step out in faith without knowing all the details. Freedom taught her that obedience is greater than certainty. When she's free, she no longer competes. She's not comparing her journey to anyone else's. She understands that divine timing doesn't operate by the world's clock. She's not running out of time. She's running in purpose. Freedom taught her that waiting is not punishment, it's preparation. She's learned to be still when needed and to move when God says go. She's not chasing opportunities anymore. Opportunities find her because peace attracts what pressure repels. Freedom makes her fearless because she's faced herself and survived it. She's confronted her insecurities, her habits, her pain, and she didn't look away. She's done the hard work of healing, forgiving, and letting go. She's no longer at war with her reflection. She's made peace with her past and embraced her present. And when a woman is at peace with herself, nothing external can destabilize her. Fearless woman doesn't mean she never feels fear. It means fear no longer drives her. It whispers, but she doesn't listen. It threatens, but she doesn't bow. She's learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move anyway. Freedom has taught her to take the leap even when her knees are trembling, to speak up even when her voice shakes, to keep showing up even when it's uncomfortable, because she knows that her destiny requires bravery, not perfection. Freedom also makes her fearless in her faith. She doesn't just believe in God, she believes God. She's learned to trust Him when she doesn't see results, to praise Him in the process, and to rest in His timing. She's walked through seasons that broke her, and yet here she is, stronger, softer, wiser. Her scars are no longer shame, they're sacred symbols of survival. Every test became her testimony, and every valley led her closer to victory. Freedom gave her the power to choose differently, to stop repeating cycles, to forgive herself for staying too long in places that drained her, to release guilt for the woman she had to stop being in order to become who she was meant to be. Freedom allowed her to start over, not because she failed, because she finally understood her value. She no longer clings to what's familiar just because it's comfortable. Freedom taught her that comfort zones kill callings. So she's learned to embrace discomfort as evidence that she's growing. She's not afraid of being misunderstood because she knows that not everyone will recognize the woman God is transforming her into. And that's okay. She's no longer performing for an audience. She's walking with purpose. Freedom makes her fearless because she's seen what bondage feels like. The mental prisons, the emotional chains, the spiritual numbness, and she refuses to go back. She's tasted liberty, and now she can't live without it. She's learned to protect her peace like it's sacred, because it is. She's learned to say no without guilt, to rest without apology, to be still without fear. Now, she walks boldly, not because everything is perfect, but because she's not pretending anymore. She's not striving to be who others expect. She's resting in who God created. She's not chasing happiness, she's living in wholeness. Her joy is not circumstantial, it's spiritual. Her confidence is not borrowed, it's built on truth. And that's why she's dangerous. Because she's free, because she's fearless, because nothing can hold her down anymore. Not her past, not people, not fear. She's learned that freedom is not just a feeling, it's a state of being. It's a declaration that says, I am no longer bound. She walks in grace. She speaks with authority. She lives with intention. And every step she takes is proof that freedom and fear cannot coexist. Because once a woman becomes free, truly free, she becomes unstoppable. She becomes everything fear tried to keep her from becoming. She becomes the living testimony that freedom doesn't just change your life. It changes your spirit. There is a power in silence that the world often fails to understand. People are always talking, always reacting, always trying to prove themselves. But a woman who has learned the art of silence knows something they do not, that strength does not always have to be loud to be felt. Silence becomes her fortress. Silence becomes her weapon. Silence becomes a language that only God and the spiritually mature understand. Because sometimes greatest victory is not in speaking, but in waiting, observing, and letting God fight your battles. Silence is not the absence of action. It is a deliberate choice. It's the conscious decision to hold your tongue when provoked. It's the wisdom to refrain from arguing with ignorance, to step back when tension rises, and to pause before reacting to chaos. There was a time when words were her first defense, when she spoke in haste and reacted to every slight. But God taught her that not every battle requires a response, and not every confrontation deserves energy. Sometimes silence itself speaks louder than words ever could. The strength of silence lies in restraint. It is the refusal to let others dictate your mood. your peace, or your future. It is the power to observe without judgment, to hear without anger, and to move without haste. A woman who walks in silence does not appear weak. She appears intentional. Her calmness confuses the enemy because he cannot provoke her. Her stillness disarms negativity because she refuses to give it a foothold in her mind. Her patience demonstrates maturity, discernment, and faith. Silence is not emptiness, it is fullness under control. There was a time when she felt compelled to explain herself to the world. Every opinion, every criticism, doubt demanded a defense. She tried to justify her choices, defend her character, and clarify her intentions. God allowed her to experience the futility of such efforts, teaching her that the most powerful people do not need to explain their worth. Silence became her teacher, showing her that a response is not always required. Sometimes waiting on God and holding your peace is the most strategic move you can make. Silence sharpens perspective. It allows her to see situations clearly without being clouded by emotion. When everything around her seems chaotic, her silence keeps her grounded. She can distinguish between threats that require action and distractions that demand none. She can perceive motives, understand agendas, and recognize deception. When the world is loud with lies, gossip, and manipulation, her silence becomes a sanctuary of clarity. It is a place where wisdom grows, decisions are refined, and her next steps are revealed by God, not by impulse. Strength in silence is also strength in restraint of speech. Words are powerful. They are not always necessary. A woman who understands this chooses her words carefully, only speaking when it benefits her purpose or glorifies God. She doesn't engage in arguments that waste her energy or debate with those unwilling to listen. She understands that silence can protect her peace, maintain her dignity, and uphold her authority. Sometimes the loudest victories are the ones unannounced. The triumphs that happen behind closed doors, seen and undisturbed. Silence is strength because it demonstrates control. It shows that she is not a slave to her emotions. She has learned that reacting in haste often escalates conflicts and diminishes her influence. By remaining silent, she preserves her energy, maintains her focus, honors her integrity. The enemy may try to provoke, distract, or intimidate, but her silence is her shield. He cannot steal what she is not willing to display. Her calm presence becomes a statement she will not be moved by manipulation or hostility. There is also a spiritual dimension to silence. It is in quiet moments that she communes with God, receiving wisdom, direction, and comfort. Silence allows her to pray deeply, listen attentively, and discern clearly. She understands that God often speaks in whispers and that in the absence of noise, his voice becomes unmistakable. Her silence becomes sacred, a time of restoration, empowerment, and revelation. It is a reminder that strength is often birthed in stillness, not chaos. Silence can also be strategic. It confuses the enemy. It frustrates those who wish to see her react. It allows her to observe motives, gather evidence, and plan her next move with precision. When she refrains from responding to every slight, she gains the upper hand. People may misinterpret her silence for weakness, but they do so at their own risk. There is power in not revealing everything at once. There is wisdom in allowing God to orchestrate outcomes rather than trying to force them with words or actions. A woman who walks in silence is respected. Her presence alone commands attention. She doesn't need to shout to be noticed because the calm authority she exudes communicates volumes. People listen when she speaks because they know her words carry weight. She has learned to save her voice for purpose, not for proving a point. She has discovered that peace and restraint are more persuasive than anger and impulsiveness. Silence is her unspoken influence, and its impact is felt by those around her, whether they understand it or not. Silence also fosters emotional intelligence. She learns to manage her feelings instead of letting them manage her. She observes, processes, and responds from a place of wisdom rather than reaction. She avoids unnecessary conflicts, refuses to escalate tension, and maintains relationships without compromising her values. Silence becomes a tool for personal growth, a mechanism for spiritual discipline, and a hallmark of maturity. Moreover, silence protects her peace. A world filled with noise, distractions, and negativity, silence creates a safe space for reflection and restoration. It allows her to detach from toxic influences, avoid unnecessary drama, and preserve her mental and spiritual health. By refusing to respond to every provocation, she maintains her equilibrium and keeps her mind clear for the battles that matter. Peace, after all, is a form of power, and silence safeguards that peace. Silence strengthens patience. She understands that not everything requires immediate reaction. Time is a tool of clarity, and restraint is a teacher of wisdom. Challenge, she can wait without worry, endure without complaint, and trust without fear. She has learned that timing is everything and that God's timing is perfect. Embracing silence, she aligns herself with divine strategy rather than human expectation. She moves in accordance with purpose, not impulse. Her silence also reflects confidence. She doesn't need to seek validation or approval through words. She doesn't prove herself by arguing or justifying. Her self-assurance is rooted in God's truth, not in people's opinions. Others may try to undermine her, speak against her, or challenge her. She remains unmoved. Her silence becomes a declaration. She is secure, she is strong, and she is guided by a higher power. Silence is strength because it demonstrates endurance. It allows her to rise above offense, ignore slander, and overcome provocation. She refuses to be consumed by negativity. She knows when to engage and when to retreat. She understands that every storm will pass, every trial is temporary, and every situation can be transformed when handled with wisdom. Her silence is both her shield and her sword, protecting her while cutting through the unnecessary noise of life. When silence becomes strength, she transforms adversity into advantage. She observes, learns, and strategizes. She doesn't let emotions dictate her actions. She lets wisdom lead. She understands that patience is power, restraint is authority, calmness is courage. In the quiet, she discovers solutions, sees opportunities, and aligns herself with destiny. Her silence is the prelude to her triumph, preparation for her breakthrough, and the quiet before the storm of her success. In the end, silence is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is not avoidance. Silence is mastery. Mastery over self, mastery over circumstance, and mastery over the enemy's tactics. She has learned that words can wait, people can misunderstand, and situations can resolve themselves under God's hand. She has embraced stillness as a strategy, calm as a weapon, and patience as power. A woman who walks in silence commands respect without demanding it, leads without forcing it, and conquers without announcing it. Her strength is measured not by her voice, but by her restraint. Her influence is felt not by her presence alone, by her control over it. Her victories are complete because they are born in alignment with God's plan rather than reaction to the world's chaos. That's why silence becomes her strength. It protects her peace, sharpens her mind, cultivates her patience, strengthens her spirit, and empowers her purpose. Silence, she is unshakable. In silence, she is strategic. In silence, she is unstoppable. It is in the quiet moments that she discovers the depth of her resilience, the power of her faith, authority she carries as a woman who has learned that sometimes the greatest battle is won without uttering a single word. Silence becomes strength. Through it, she becomes dangerous, not because she is loud, but because she is intentional, not because she seeks attention, but because she commands it, because she reacts, but because she responds with wisdom. And that is the mark of a woman who has truly walked in the power of God. She lets silence speak. In that silence, her strength roars. There's a transformative power that comes from healing, not just the healing of the body, the healing of the heart, the mind, and the spirit. Healed people carry a unique strength because they have walked through fire and emerged on the other side. They've been broken, betrayed, and beaten down, yet they did not stay there. They allowed God to restore, renew, and redeem them. And in that restoration, they discovered a profound truth. Those who are healed have the capacity to heal others. Healing is never meant to be kept in silence. It is not a private luxury, a divine responsibility. When God restores you, He does not just restore you for yourself. He restores you to serve, to inspire, to uplift, and to guide others who are still in the valley. Healed people carry an empathy that cannot be faked. They know the weight of pain. Because of their experience, they can walk alongside others with understanding, patience, and wisdom. Their scars become a roadmap for someone else's journey. A healed person understands the language of suffering. They know what it feels like to cry alone at night, to face rejection, and to feel unseen. But they also know the sweetness of God's intervention, strength found in surrender, and the freedom that comes through forgiveness. That understanding is a gift, one that allows them to offer hope where despair resides. They can speak into a person's darkness in a way that someone untouched by struggle never could. Their words carry weight because they are tested and true. Healed people heal others not through perfection, but through authenticity. They do not pretend that life is always easy or that God's path is free of difficulty. They share their stories with transparency, acknowledging their past wounds while pointing to the lessons learned and the grace received. Their vulnerability becomes a bridge for connection. It gives permission for others to open their hearts, to trust again, and to believe that recovery is possible. Healing transforms them into living testimonies. Testimonies are powerful tools for restoration. The process of healing also equips people with discernment. A healed person can recognize pain in others, often before it is spoken. They can identify brokenness, fear, and insecurity because they've been there themselves. This sensitivity allows them to minister with precision, knowing when to encourage, when to correct, when to listen, and when to remain silent. They understand that healing is a process, not a single act, and that patience is as necessary as prayer. Healed people heal others because they know the value of empathy over judgment. They do not rush others through their process or belittle their struggles. Instead, they offer a safe space for growth and transformation. They remember what it felt like to be misunderstood and carry grace as their standard. They understand that healing cannot be forced, it must be nurtured, and they provide guidance with gentleness, wisdom, and love, creating an environment where people feel seen, heard, and valued. Moreover, healed people heal others because they lead by example. Their lives are living proof that recovery is possible, that pain is not permanent, and that God's power to restore is real. People don't just listen to their words, they watch their actions. They observe how healed people navigate challenges, maintain faith in difficult circumstances, and extend grace even when it's undeserved. This example inspires courage, faith, and hope in those still struggling. Healed people heal others through encouragement. They offer words of affirmation, reminders of worth, and hope for the future. They lift the fallen and remind them that their story is not over. They recognize potential in people who cannot see it themselves. They speak life where the enemy intended death, vision where there was confusion, and restoration where there was despair. Because they have experienced the transformative power of God's love, they become vessels of that love, pouring it into the lives of others. Healing also gives people the power to break cycles. Those who have been hurt in families, communities, or relationships understand how pain can perpetuate itself if left unresolved. Healed people have the opportunity to interrupt that cycle. They can teach healthier ways to respond, forgive, and move forward. They can model emotional and spiritual maturity, showing that past wounds do not have to dictate future actions. Their healing becomes generational, impacting not only the individuals they reach, but also those who come after. Healed people heal others through prayer and intercession. They know the power of God's intervention firsthand. They understand the importance of faith, persistence, and the authority of prayer. They lift others in spiritual warfare, standing in the gap where people are too weak, too weary, or too uncertain to fight for themselves. Their prayers carry the weight of experience, and their intercession reflects understanding of what it means to battle and to overcome. A healed person also brings hope in unexpected ways. Sometimes the simplest acts, a kind word, a listening ear, a hug, a prayer, can become instruments of healing. They recognize that restoration is not always dramatic or public. Often, the smallest gestures are the most impactful. Their healing allows them to see needs, respond with compassion, and make a difference without seeking recognition. They serve quietly, faithfully, and effectively. Furthermore, healed people heal others by teaching resilience. They demonstrate that setbacks are not the end, that mistakes are not disqualifying, and that storms are not permanent. They help others to see challenges as opportunities for growth and pain as a pathway to purpose. Their stories of triumph over trials become a blueprint for success, offering guidance and inspiration for those still navigating their own struggles. Healed people heal others because they understand grace. They have received it, and now they extend it. They know the difference between justice and mercy, accountability and condemnation, correction and punishment. Their healed hearts operate from a place of love and compassion, not bitterness or resentment. They become agents of reconciliation, restoration, and encouragement. And perhaps most importantly, healed people heal others because they recognize the divine responsibility of their own recovery. They understand that their healing is not just for comfort, for calling. God restored them not to remain in peace alone, but to carry peace into the lives of others. They have been chosen to be conduits of hope, channels of love and vessels of restoration. Their healing becomes a mission, their testimony becomes a ministry, and their journey becomes a guided post for those still finding their way. A healed person is powerful not because they never suffered, but because they survived. Not because they avoided pain, but because they overcame it. They are living proof that God can restore what was broken, renew what was lost, redeem what was stolen, and through them, others learn that healing is possible, hope is real, and God's love never fails. The beauty of healed people is that they turn personal victories into communal triumphs. They understand that their story matters, not just for them, for everyone it can touch. Their experience becomes a map, their journey becomes a guide, and their resilience becomes a beacon. They heal not to remain whole alone, but to invite others into wholeness as well. So healed people heal others. Their lives are a testimony. Their words are a balm, and their presence is a refuge. They carry light into darkness, hope into despair, and strength into weakness. Their healing becomes an instrument of purpose, a channel of compassion, and a legacy of love. That is why God heals. Not just for restoration, for multiplication. He restores us so that we can become vessels of His mercy, instruments of His grace, and agents of His power. Healed people heal others, and through them the cycle of brokenness is broken. The work of God is magnified, His glory is revealed. Healed people heal others. And in that truth, the world finds hope, the hurting find comfort, and the lost find direction. Their lives testify that what was once broken can become beautiful. What was once wounded can become whole, and what was once silent can now speak life. Healing is not the end, it is the beginning of influence, impact, divine purpose.